And I got it. All right, everybody keep your microphones quiet for a minute so I can put up my sign on the front of it. And so we got it on speaker view. So only the person speaking is on. Oh, wow. Okay. It's on YouTube. All right. Those of you that are watching on YouTube, just hang in there a minute. We're going to get it shared out so we can share it around. Share it on Facebook right now. Okay, well, while it's doing all this sharing, come on now. Where's Facebook? There we go. Post on Facebook. All righty. Okay, you got it, Scotty? You probably gave me a thumbs up. I'm not looking, so. Okay. All right. We should be on Facebook now. We're on Tour for the Tour for the Nation. Somebody will share it on B'nai Noach Connection with Israel. You can share it on Tour for the Nations too. Facebook page. Appreciate it. And we're live from Sfat, Israel, and it's 3:01 in the morning on the 30th. Oh, today's New Year's Eve. It's 12:31 over here. It's the 31st of December. You guys are still on the 30th. You're on Wednesday, but here we are in another year. Boy, I'm so glad to see 2020 go. This is Pesach Sherbo live from Sfat, Israel, and we're broadcasting from Tour for the Nations in Sfat and through the YouTube channel of World Noahide World Center. For all of you guys out there watching on YouTube channel, we're on my Facebook page. We're on B'nai Noach Connection with Israel Facebook page. Hopefully we're on Tour for the Nations Facebook page. Anywhere you want to go, just go and hop in. We'd like you to come into the Zoom room, because when you come in the Zoom room, you can participate more in the discussion, although Scotty's watching the Facebook for comments, and I got the YouTube open. There's Scruffy Scrubs. Hello, Deborah. Good to see you on YouTube. And it's about time to put my, there we go. I'm now got my face up there. Good to see all you guys and women. Let's see what we got in the room tonight. Wow. Scotty and Terry, co-hosts, and we got Emuela. Good to see you. Emuela, Chris, Frank, Gloria, and James. Good to see you. And Thomas. And I can never figure out why they don't put these things in alphabetical order. It'd be easier, but they don't do it, I guess. All right, everybody. How you all doing today? We're doing great. I'm going to mention this now. I usually don't talk about all this stuff. Oh, here we got Imam Pamuji from West Java, Indonesia. How you doing, Imam? Are you truly an imam? Is that what you are? Or is in West Java, Indonesia? That's where Tuvia Singer was the chief rabbi there for quite a while, I think, in Indonesia. You know, Tuvia, or some people pronounce it Tovia. Yeah, hey, I'm 4 days after taking the COVID-19 vaccine and feeling good, and everything's fine. And I'm pretty happy about that, because I had my doubts about it. And, but, you know, I don't talk a whole lot about this stuff, but I went through this whole thought process. You know, everybody's been talking for months and months and months about all the conspiracy theories and all the stuff going on, and yes, take it, don't take it, trackers in it, not trackers in it, and all this kind of stuff. You know, Shira is in Abilene, Texas right now, visiting her grandkids and her kids. And they don't even know what COVID-19 is, I don't think. Well, I'm joking. They do. Zachia, hello from Peru. Good to see you. Good to see you. Anyway, I'm thinking, look, I'm almost 76 years old, And, you know, you got that age, you got age health problems. You know, I don't have any illnesses. Baruch Hashem, thank you, Lord. And you think about, you get COVID-19 and these people go in the hospital and they get tubes stuck down their throats and they get all this kind of stuff. It's kind of a little scary thing. Who wants to go through that, right? And then I started thinking about, well, but the vaccine's brand new. It's got no track record on it. And every time somebody gets a bip out of it, you know, oh, I got a headache or an earache or something like that, it's in the news. This person had a health event. That's what they call it now. They don't call it an allergic reaction. They call it a health event. And this person got a headache. And of course, every time somebody dies after they get the vaccine, it's so-and-so died and so-and-so. But when you go and read the stories about it, this one had cancer and heart disease, and this one was a diabetic and heart disease, and this one had this and this one had that. And thank you, Lord, that I didn't have any of that stuff. But I had to go to the clinic to get something done to one of my fingers. I had a little infection on my finger. So I went up there to have them clean that up. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I just decided I'm going to go get the flu vaccine. And so the next morning I got up and went and got it. And it was just a spur of the moment decision. And I'm so glad, because I'm done talking about it. When people start talking about it, I say, oh, I've been vaccinated. I don't care about it anymore. And it stops the conversation, you know, other than those that want to say, oh, you went and got vaccinated. Oh, my goodness. You know, this is going to sound really silly, but it's kind of like when some of the people that are Messianics or Christians, you tell them you've left religion and you've become a Noahide. Oh my goodness, you're going to go to hell. All this stuff's going to happen. So some people tell you that after you get the shot. But anyway, I'm having fun with it, and I'm teasing people with it. And but quite a few people I know are getting it, even those with heavy health problems, like the Gabbai at our synagogue got it. I didn't know he got it because he has so many health problems. He's in the hospital every 6 months, it seems, for an operation or something, and he got it. So, and here, my rabbi got it. A bunch of other people got it. So, anyway, get it over with. That's all. Okay. What are we going to talk about this week? You know, I never put titles on what I do. And sometimes I think, wow, I really should, because how do people know, you know, if they go to the YouTube channel, how do they know what we talked about in this? And they're going to have to turn it on and wait through everything to see what was talked about, because we're kind of a free-flowing place and we answer questions, and we're always willing to take questions. You can type them in YouTube, you can type them on Facebook, you can type them in the Zoom room. If you're out there, you're watching, and you want to come into the Zoom room, just go to Torah for the Nations, or go to my page, or go to Connection with Israel. And there's a Zoom room link. Just click on it. You don't need a passcode. Just click, and it'll tell you, hang on a minute, somebody will let you in the room, and you come right in the room. So we need more people to get involved in the room. So it helps the conversation flow when we have questions and comments. Like to have it. All right, this week's Torah portion. What we're reading this week is called V'yahi. And it's like V'yahi is will be, it will be. And it's, to put it really quickly, Jacob lives his final 17 years of his life in Egypt. And then before his passing, he asked Joseph to take an oath he will bury him in the Holy Land. He had to go back to Israel to be buried. He didn't want to be buried in a foreign land, which of course Joseph promised him. And then he took in Manasseh and Ephraim, his grandsons and um, elevated them to status of uh, his sons. And in other words, they became part of the tribes. And at that point, we got uh, uh, 12, 13 names for tribes. Because there is no tribe of Joseph, but so, each son had a tribe, but there was no tribe of Joseph, but we have the tribe of Manasseh and Ephraim, 13 tribes. And there's a whole story about that we will hear as we go by. But anyway, Jacob says, I'm dying, help me here. I want to reveal the end of days. He was going to tell Israel, and each of the sons, Israel was going to tell each of the sons when the end of days, because he had prophecy, he knew everything, but God shut his mouth, wouldn't let him do it. And so we see as a list of talking about each tribe and what their personality trait is and what their what's going on, where they're going to be and who they are. It's kind of just to run a quick rundown. Judah's going to be leaders, legislators, kings. It says that the Torah will never will always be between the legs of Yehuda. They're the main group. The Judeans, the Jews. That's where the name Jew nickname came from. The Levites, the priests will come from Levites. Scholars come from Issachar. Seafarers from Zvulun. And in the end, Zvulun and Issachar team up together. The seafarers make the money, and they support Issachar, the tribe of Issachar, so they can learn and study and go into the depth of God's word. School teachers from Simon or Shimon, which is a tribe that kind of disappears when they get into Egypt. When they get into Israel. The tribe kind of folds in amongst other tribes. Soldiers from Gad, judges from Dan, olive growers from Asher. And then Reuven is rebuked for confusing his father's marriage bed, which you all know the story there, or most of us. And Simon and Levi are rebuked for the massacre at Shechem. Dinah was raped, and they told the guys, get circumcised, and we'll come together. And then they went in and killed all the people there. Naphtali was given the swiftness of a deer, Benjamin the ferociousness of a wolf, and Joseph himself is blessed with beauty and fertility. And this, instead of telling him the end of days, this is what he told to everybody. And then, of course, there was a funeral procession that went out to back to Egypt. When you read the story of the funeral procession, leaving Egypt, going up to the cave of the Machpelah, where Abraham and Sarah are buried, and then coming back, you realize that the Pharaoh at that point was already planned to make sure that Israel came back, because he sent troops with him. He sent all kinds of protection for him. He sent all kinds of things. And in other words, they had no choice but to come back to Israel. Plus, they didn't take their animals. They were taken care of while they were gone. So Joseph is buried. Now, I'm just giving you guys a nutshell. I'm not going through this verse by verse. You guys most of you read it anyway. So Joseph, too, he dies at the age of 110. And he instructs that his bones be taken out of Egypt and buried in the Holy Land. but he knew in the end that Israel was going to leave, but he couldn't tell everybody that. So he said, look, when you leave, just take my bones with you and take it up to Israel. And this was a whole lot of years later when it finally happened, the Exodus. And before he died, hang on one second, my page skipped. I'm kind of skimming a page here. Before he died, Joseph conveys to the children of Israel the treatment from which they will draw their hope and faith in the difficult years to come. He says, God will surely remember you and bring you out of this land to the land of which he swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And this was the beginning, the true beginning of the Jewish nation. This is where it all started in Egypt. And God brought the Jews, and at that time there was no such thing as a Jew, but the sons of Israel, Bnei Yisrael and Israel himself, there were 70 people, brought them down to Egypt. And when they left, there was something like 3 million that left, but there was also another, that was about 20%. There was a whole bunch more that didn't make it out. They just got assimilated, eaten up by the land. Went into the practices of the land. And this is what happens when you go into an exile. When you go somewhere and you live there and you get used to living there, and that becomes your land. Like born and raised in the USA, so I'm an American, right? But what happened to me in America was America, the land of America, formed who I am. It was part of me. It's in my accent. It's in the way I think. It's in the way I do things. Wherever you're born becomes a part of who you are. The land comes together with you. And all the Jews that were in exile tried to stay to who they were as if they were living in the land of Israel. That's what we're supposed to do the whole time we're in exile. From the time the first exile of Israel, we followed what we were supposed to do from Torah and did what we were supposed to do. Back in the time before Egypt, the people were actually what we call today Noahides. They did the 7 universal laws, plus a lot of people did, and plus then we have Abraham that branches off, and Isaac and Jacob that do the explicit instructions of God for their family. It's a family. Many people mistake Israel for a religion. It is not a religion. It is a tribe, a clan, a family with a way of life, and we follow our king, our God, the God who calls himself the God of Israel, the God who calls himself the God who brought us out of the land of Egypt. And that's who we follow today. By the way, John Riggs, how you doing? Cloudy Hat 17 from Tennessee, USA. Another Tennessean, my goodness. How you doing? Got a lot of Tennesseans today. He brought us out of the land of Egypt. And when we talk about it, if you look in our prayers and you'll see it in the Torah, the God who brought us out of the land of Egypt. And he did. He took us out of the slavery of Egypt, brought us through the desert and up into Canaan, which is God's land called Israel, land of Israel. And these people that he brought out were called Bnei Yisrael, the sons of Israel, literally the sons and daughters of Jacob, who became Israel, literally. Anybody that joined in with them also got to go, they became a part of Israel, even if they didn't convert. But if they moved in, into the group and worshiped the God of Israel, he looked at them as one of his people of Israel, not Jews, but people of Israel. And they were called, according to Torah, Hasidei Umot Ha'olam, or the Hasidim of all the nations of the world, or righteous Gentiles, righteous of the nations. And they were different than what we call, everybody hears the word goyim, goy, which they think it's a bad name to call somebody. Actually, it's not. Israel's a goy also. It's a nation. But we started using it as it separates us. For the difference between Israel and the nations, so we say Israel and the goyim. But a goy is someone that is stuck in avodah zarah, worshiping the wrong God, or belong to a religion and has created a God that they worship, or taken the rules from the 5 books of Moses and interpreted them any way they want, and they follow those. That's a religion. When someone leaves that behind and comes in and comes what we call today very loosely Noahides, then they actually are joining themselves to Israel and becoming a part of Israel. Not the family. There's a family called Israel, and then there's the group of followers of the God of Israel who are called Israel also. And God decides through birth, I guess, who is what and where, but everybody's got a place with the God of Israel. And when it says the God that brought us out of Egypt, and I've mentioned many times, Egypt, it comes from the word, it's called in Hebrew, Mitzrayim, comes from the Hebrew word of mechitzah. It's a constriction, or it's a something that screens you from the truth, or it blocks off the truth from you. And actually, we call the throat a mechitzah, because it's a constriction there in our body, between our body and our head. And anything that we do has to go through that little Egypt to come out your mouth, to come out all the other things. When you get anger, let's say, and it gets in your heart and you let it go up and out through your mouth, all that rage, all that anger goes up into your head and just spews out your mouth. And you guys have seen it, and you probably participated in it like I have in my life. But as it comes up through this constriction where it builds up, it actually builds up here, and you let it go up into your head, where your Chokhmah Binah V'dat, your knowledge, wisdom, and understanding is, and you filter it, then what comes out your mouth is something different than anger. The anger does not have to come out of your mouth. You can do what God wants you to do, which is be kind to everybody, animals and everybody else. Most everybody that listens to me, I'm just rehashing some old stuff, but I wanted everybody to hear about it and know about it. Again, we always need to be reminded of stuff. And it's this time of year, it's always good to remember it, because sometimes things happen and things go on that seem to get our anger up a little bit and make us a little bit angry about stuff, especially when you have relatives, they put up these pretty little trees in their homes, and they celebrate, and do all this stuff. Interesting thing, Shira, her sons-in-law and her sons, question came up this year: why do we do this year after year? They don't like, the women like it. It's great for the women, and it's the cooking and the food and the grandkids and the big family reunions and all that kind of stuff. But they want to know, why do they put up the Christmas trees, and why do they spend all this money on presents when the kids have a closet full of presents anyway? And a closet full of toys anyway they don't play with, and all this kind of stuff. They pretty much made a decision they're probably not going to do it next year. Now, all of them haven't come around to be a Noahide yet, but they will. They'll get rid of the other stuff and come around. But every year when Shira goes to visit them, she has a Hanukkah party and lights the menorah. And so the kids are starting to do that. And so they're starting to like that. They're starting to get involved with that, which is really good. The kids, and they're at the age where they're, she got 14 of them. So they're all spread out in the ages there. But I think the oldest is only like 12. And they're starting to ask questions. They want to know more about it, and they're learning about it. And they actually do little skits. The kids love to do the skits. She does them at Purim time about the Persians. She's done them at Hanukkah time and at Passover time. And the kids love playing the parts in the skits, and they also learn that way, which is, by the way, is a good teaching tool for kids. Anyway, I ran on a little bit about all this stuff. Look back at 2020, and somebody asked me, was telling me how bad Corona was, and I said to them, what good has come out of Corona? And they said nothing. I said, I think you're wrong. Think about it and make a list of good that has come out of Corona. And sure enough, the person sent me back a list of things that they thought that was good that has come out of the Corona. And why did I even ask the question? Because everything that happens is under God's control. If he allows it to happen. And there's usually a reason. If we think about it, why would God allow the Corona to happen? And think about it for a few minutes, and we're going to go back, and somebody might want to type in the chat room why they think what good came out of it, or why would God want it. And not everything that he does is a punishment. Understand something. Sometimes it's just a teaching lesson is all it is. Now, I got a question here from James. Could you explain the difference regarding burial tradition or commandment of moving bones out of Egypt or leaving people where they are first buried, as I understand happens today? Yeah. If a Jew wants to be buried in Israel, it's okay. They can bring his bones to Israel. I mean, after 10 or 15 or 20 or 100 years. Or if we want to bring one that's tzaddikim, the righteous people that died out of Israel to Israel, the government sometimes will get permission from the family and bring them here and do something in Jerusalem or in Sfat or in Tiberias. There is no commandment or anything like that about the burial traditions, other than we go in like we came out. We're buried without a casket. Now, some places say you have to have a casket, so we just still use a little, around the world. Here in Israel, you go into the ground the same way you came out of your mother's womb. You can't even have nothing on you, nothing. You just naked, just like that. You wrap you in a white sheet and put you in the ground. We're buried within as quickly as possible after death. In other words, it can be done the same day. They bury people here in Israel up until 10, 11 o'clock at night. So if a person dies in the morning, they can be buried the same day. And this is more for health. And it's in the Torah. If someone dies, you just bury them. Now, they don't have to be buried where they first died. Abraham and Sarah bought the cave of Machpelah outside of Hebron. And we call it the cave of the patriarchs, and the cave, the Machpelah, which means, Machpelah means a multiplied cave or a bigger cave than normal. And there's a history of all the people buried there, including Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and their wives. And it's a good place that we like to go and pray because we're with our forefathers. But taking the bones out of Egypt is especially, it was the wish of Joseph and the wish of Jacob that their bones not be left in a foreign land. They wanted to go back home. Israel was home. That was where they wanted to be buried. Most people like to get buried in their hometown, or they arrange for a plot in a cemetery long before anything happens. Here in Israel, whatever town you live in, it's automatic. You don't have to buy anything. You got a place. If you pass away someplace else in the world, if you want, and most people have insurance that brings them back, especially if they're out traveling, it brings them back to Israel so they can be buried here in Israel. Today, anybody buried anywhere in the world, if their family wants to actually dig them up and bring them, they can do that. And we bury underground. And today, because of land and not wanting to use up the whole land for cemeteries, if couples die, you bury one on top of the other, actually. They have it set up that way. There's a little cement divider between them. And they've started building, I don't want to call it a wall or a fence or something, in the cemeteries where you can actually buy it's like a little compartment. You just put the person in there. Yeah, James says, just seem to recall this practice from the Shoah. Yes, we did. And nobody, and especially the relatives of the people that were killed in the Shoah, didn't want them laying in the ground of Germany. Germany had desecrated them, desecrated the families. So those that could, if they could find their people, would dig them up and send them to Israel. And sometimes when mass graveyards were found, I mean, there's, of course, nothing left but bones of people. And we can bring them to Israel just if it's a pile of bones and we know where the gravesite is, and then we can bury them and put a monument up to the people that died at wherever it was. Here in Israel, when you're doing construction or paving roads or doing anything, it's amazing, but almost everywhere you dig, you come up with ancient ruins or you come up with bones. Now, if they're Jewish, it's forbidden to move them from where they were buried at the time if their families didn't move them. That means if out in front of my house, they're doing road construction and they dig down to put a sewer in beside the road and they find bones, they're not allowed to move them. You have to rebury them and leave them buried. Some of the antiquities in Israel are also buried. If anybody has ever walked on the waterfront in Tiberias, there's a paved waterfront, made with bricks and stuff. You'd call it a boardwalk in the States, I guess. And the lower part of the town, everywhere you walk, you're actually walking on top of most of the old city of Tiberias from the old days, from the biblical days. What they did was when they found them, they just filled in with sand over top of them and built the city because they didn't want to destroy the architecture and the old city, but they didn't want to destroy it by uncovering it, taking it down, but they wanted to use the land, of course, for to have a waterfront and to have the other things. So it's just buried like you'd bury a person. You just covered it over, and all the maps in the town office have they know where everything is under there and all that kind of, the Sanhedrin used to meet there. That building is under there. There's a couple of old synagogues that are under there, and there's some on top. It just depends on where you were. So anyway, yeah, we do respect all of that, and we follow. You bury somebody immediately. You do 7 days of intense mourning, only if they're a first degree blood relative, mother, father, or sibling. Not even for wife. They're not a blood relative. A wife or a husband is not a blood relative. You do 7 days of mourning. You get up. You do another 20 some days. A total of 30 days of mourning. At the end of 30 days, you go back to the grave site. That's when you put up the name plaque on it and you pray. And then after a year, you come back and do it again, 11 months actually, one more time. You pray again, over the gravesite of the dead person. And that's it. We're forbidden to perpetually mourn a person. In other words, a person is not supposed to, although they may if they want, especially the women, if your spouse dies, you're supposed to remarry. You're not supposed to mourn forever. You're not supposed to women are not supposed to go through the rest of their life wearing black and mourning people like the Catholics do, and don't get married again and all that kind of stuff. So God is about life. God is about life. Hello, Mr. Garza from Jonesboro, Arkansas. Good to see you. This is God's set up a system for you, for me, for everybody in the world, for life, to have life, to go forward with life, to enjoy our time we have here on earth as we go through this corridor that takes us into the next level of life. He didn't put us on this earth to suffer. He didn't put us here to try to say, oh, we're born terrible and we got to, do all this repentance and everything from the minute we can talk, repent for things. And, and this world isn't much of anything. And I got to be good and I got to be holy and I got to repent. And that way I'll get to heaven. That's not what the Torah is all about. God gives us the Torah, or great picture, Scotty, like that. Gives us the Torah and the instruction and the people to instruct us, to show us how to have a good life, how to do it with joy, always enjoy. When I say enjoy, I'm talking about I-N, next word J-O-Y, not enjoy like enjoy an outing or something. With joy, I guess is a better way to say it. He wants us to live with joy. He wants us to have a good life. He even says, he tells us on Shabbat and on holidays, drink a little wine, eat, make yourself a little feast. Enjoy your walk with me. God didn't create us to suffer and be upset and be depressed and be down. He created us to be alive, to enjoy what's going on, to be in amazement every time we look out a window or look at a mountain. I'd love Terry puts up the pictures of the sunsets or sunrise where he lives, and so do other people. And when you look at it with a sense of amazement, of wonder. Look what God has done for us. And it's for us, for humanity, for all human beings. But while he's doing this for all human beings, he's also doing it for you as an individual. He wants you to enjoy that. When you walk out into a meadow, he wants you to enjoy that. When you go to have a family get together, he wants you to enjoy these things. And not, oh, I'm not worthy, and oh, I'm so bad, and oh, I got to do this, and oh, I got to fall on my face and repent before the Lord, and all. That's not part of what God wants at all. That's all man-made stuff. So if we do something bad, he tells us that this is what you need to do to repent. Okay, you do it. It's over with. It's over with, folks. We're going through this corridor of life, and it's like coming down the birth canal, which we don't remember, but we had a life inside our moms in the womb. We come down the birth canal, we came into a different life, the next level of life, which was outside the womb. We're right now in this corridor, this hallway that a lot of Jewish scholars call it like the coming down the birth canal. When we get to the other side of life, we come right out into the next level of life. We're there. And you don't even have to, you want to know the truth of it? Here's the truth of it, folks. Every single person that God creates, and we're all created by God, along with our mothers and fathers, We have a part of him. We are a part of him, a part of God, the oneness of God. All of us one. We were created in his image. Everybody you're looking on the screens right now, if you're in the Zoom room, every picture you see, you're looking at the likeness of God here. We're all created in his likeness, his spiritual likeness. And we're all a part of God. And when you mistreat one another, you're mistreating God. Another whole teaching altogether. The point is, we're one together. And he wants us to live the best possible life we can. And he wants us to help others live the best possible life. Yes. Spark of the divine, Divorce says. That's right. We all have that spark. We all have that good that in us. And we go forward. And so if we have, God is eternal, no beginning, no end. We have a beginning. We start somewhere. But our beginning was also eternal because we were with God. Then we get born. And it starts your identity. Old Pesach here, that's my identity. And it goes through this quarter of life and comes out on the other side as Pesach, as a part of God. I keep my individual identity. I don't disappear. I don't go into non-existence. I stay connected to God. I'm still a part of God, and my identity does too. And I'm not in a hurry to be there, but it'll be sure nice when I get there. I'm very thankful that Hashem has given me as many years as I have. He has. And I've been through it all, just like everybody else. I've been through depressions. I've been through bad times. I've been through good times. I've been through illnesses and all this kind of stuff. We all go through it, but that's just a part of life. I had a dinner this evening over at a friend's house, a rabbi and his wife. Shira is out of town. So on Wednesdays, they invite me over to their house and I have a meal with them. And we always discuss a little about God and have a discussion about whatever the Torah portion is for the week. And the question came about trusting God. And they asked me if I got the vaccine. I said, yeah. And with all this controversy going on, and my answer was, you know what? I just trust God. He's going to take care of things. He's in charge. And so the wife asked me, how long have you really had that trust in God? And I could give her to the year. It was 1973. 74. Sorry. Where I had total trust in God. And I wasn't religious. I was a Reformed Jew, and we used to have Friday night meals at the house, and we'd light candles and we'd sit around playing guitars and pianos and flutes and singing psalms and having a good time, which playing instruments is forbidden on Shabbat. I wasn't Shomer Shabbat. And I went to Shul I didn't go every Friday night, and I went, of course, on all the holidays. But I was Judaism light, I guess, is what you could call it. But I began to trust God even back when I was in those days. And that's another story also. Someday I'll tell it. But I've trusted him ever since. That's a long time. And so I've got to trust him also at this time with the coronavirus. I know something very well, and in Torah you find it all the time. Whenever something happens, whenever an illness happens, whatever happens, before it happens, the cure for that situation has already been created by God. The cure for every disease was created by God before the disease came out, because he's not going to give us something that we can't control. Now, people right away think cancer. There's a few other diseases. And we human beings, we've got caught up in big pharma, big pharmacy type stuff. If it doesn't come from one of the big pharmacies and doesn't go through all this other stuff, we don't look for it anywhere else. But I'm here to tell you that God puts the cure for everything right in front of our noses. Maybe it's hidden a little bit. We have to just go look for it, but we have to focus on where we're going to get it. We don't have to wait for pharma to put a bunch of chemicals together. So it's important that we know that. You know, there's a saying that the Christians use a whole lot that they've borrowed from us is God will never give you something more than you can handle. You may think you can't handle it, but God knows you can. Look all through the Bible. He gives it to people. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, everybody got it. Samson got it. David went up against Goliath. God never gives you more than you can handle. But you have to have the trust in God that he knows you can handle it. Then once you trust him that you know you can handle it, then you can handle it. It's no biggie in the end. So if you just trust him that everything that happens and everything that's done, there's already a cure for it. It's not miraculous. It's here. He created it beforehand. He knew it was going to happen. So when I finally got through all the conspiracy theories and all the yada da da on Corona, I realized, hey, what's wrong with me? I got to trust God. If this Corona comes out around the world, the cure for it's already here. So the vaccination's here, I'll use it. The man sometimes creates or puts the pieces together to make the cure, but I'm sure there's natural cures out there somewhere. I'm almost positive of it. And I think I talked about this Sunday night, excuse me. I went to the clinic at the HMO because I had a little infection on my hand, on my finger. And they, the nurses fixed it up, all that. They wanted me to see a doctor. I went and saw him. And the prescription he gave me to take care of it was the weirdest thing I ever heard. Boil 2 cups of water and put 2 tablespoons of salt in it and let it cool off a little bit and just soak your finger in it to draw out whatever's in your finger. And then after you do that, get yourself a piece of an aloe plant, the meat on the inside, and just wrap it around your finger and tape it there. It'll draw it out. So I said, well, I don't have an aloe plant in my house. He says, what? You don't have an aloe plant in your house? Everybody in Israel has aloe plants. We don't. Because they grow and you don't have to take care of them too much, but they're also very good for medicinal purposes. I said, I have a tube of aloe that I bought in the pharmacy for like sunburn and stuff. He says, throw it away. It's not worth anything. So I said, well, what do I do? He says, on the way home from the doctor's appointment, go buy yourself a head of cabbage, peel off a couple of leaves and cut them the size that'll fit there and just wrap them around and seal it up just like the aloe plant. It'll also draw it out. Now, here's a guy, a doctor, telling me these are home remedies. He didn't prescribe all kinds of pills. He didn't prescribe antibiotics. He didn't prescribe nothing. He just said, just go do that. Well, I did the cabbage for 2 days and I got tired of doing the cabbage. and ever since then, I've had no problem. The cure is here, folks. It's out there. And most of the people, the rabbis get divided on a little bit, but they're not from the reason you would think. We have a law of shatnats or sheetnuts, I don't know how to pronounce it in English, against mixing things together. Like if you're growing corn in a field, you can't grow asparagus in the same field. They have to be in separate fields. You can't mix wool and linen together when you're making a garment. All wool or all linen. There doesn't seem to be a prohibition against polyester, the plastic stuff they used to make clothes out of. We're not supposed to mix things. So why did I bring that up? I forgot. I'm sorry, folks. I just jumped a track right here in the middle of my thought about why I'm talking about not mixing things. But if anybody remembers, type it in or tell me. Um, but we don't mix things together. Oh man. Okay, like we don't do hybrid animals and we don't do hybrid plants and we don't do hybrid stuff like that. That's part of God says what I created is good enough. Put it together any way you want, but you don't have to make hybrids. So anyway, let's move on from there. Terry, go ahead.
You were talking about how the rabbis have some differences, and then you were talking about the mixture.
Right. Thank you. The one of the vaccines, or two of them, are made from what's called RNA. RNA is a slice of the DNA system of the virus itself. It's not fetal with tissue. It's not, doesn't come, just a piece of the DNA. And it's a part that specifically does one thing. In every disease, there's the cure is inside it also. The RNA, and you can go look it up and see what it does, because I'm not that scientific to explain it all out. But the COVID-19 has like a layer of fat around it. And when it gets into the body, it uses that fat to feed the cells, and the cells take in your cells take in the COVID, and all this stuff multiplies. But when you get the vaccine, this little piece of RNA that they put in it actually goes into your cells and dissolves and becomes part of something inside your own body cells. And when that COVID wants to start feeding its fat to your cells, the cell just dissolves it. Gone. It doesn't go inside your body cells, or much less goes in than what would normally go in. And so some of the rabbis say this is the idea of shotnets, of putting two things together that are not supposed to be together. But they don't take the same stance on other things. The cherry tomato is a genetically modified tomato. I don't know if you all knew that. And a lot of people eat cherry tomatoes. Well, the origin of the cherry tomato is a laboratory here in Israel years ago. And, now they sell it all over the world, and the seeds all over the world. So I guess we're allowed to do that, but we didn't make it a cherry tomato that tastes like a banana. And some of the people are doing silly stuff like that. I mean, if you want a banana, eat a banana. Why do you want a tomato that tastes like a banana? But they play with this stuff, and people eat it. And I wouldn't do it, but we're not allowed to do that. We're not allowed to have hybrids. Geraniums. Everybody know what a geranium is? The plant that comes in white, it comes in red, it probably comes in other colors. Good question. Just got a question in YouTube, and I'll address it in a minute about can DNA test be proof if someone is Jewish or not. We'll get into that in 1 second. The geraniums I had in a planter on a porch railing all the way around the edge of the porch. I had them there for years. And I had white and red planted together. One white, one red, one, very pretty, all that stuff. One year I go out and look, and they're all pink. There's no white, there's no red, they're all pink. And for a while I couldn't understand why, but they crossbred. The white and the red crossbred over the years I had them out there with me doing anything, and they all came up pink one year. And I actually went and asked somebody, is it okay for me to have these pink geraniums out here? And they said, yes, you didn't crossbreed anything. They're all geraniums. They just have different colors. Just like human beings, we have different colors of skin. And that's not called mixing. We're still human beings. And so when we come together and we have all these different colored skins and stuff, it's okay. So I was relieved a little bit, but I knew that I wasn't mixing or doing the wrong thing. One of the interesting things is the apple tree. If I take a Macintosh apple and I want to, and I want to take a branch from a Macintosh apple tree and put it into a Smith apple tree, common sense would tell you that it would you'd end up with a breed between the two eventually on the tree, but that's not the way it works. The Smith tree will stay a Smith tree, and the Macintosh branch will be a Macintosh branch. Don't know how it does it, but I read this years ago. It just stays what it is. It doesn't crossbreed or anything. A little bit of information. Got a question. Can a DNA test be used as proof if someone is Jewish or not? It's a yes and a no. If you're Jewish and it comes out Jewish, then yeah, you're Jewish, okay? But if you're not Jewish, you have a DNA test that says you have some Jewish DNA from the Middle East and you have some from Europe, in other words, Ashkenazi and Sephardi, and you have, well, it doesn't mean you're Jewish. Let me explain. This goes all the way back to Isaac and Rebekah. Isaac and Rebekah had two sons, Jacob, who became Israel, and Esau, who became Edom, who became Rome, who became the church. Now, the people that their history takes them all the way back through, if you have those DNA markers, they should be just about the same as mine. I mean, we're first cousins. This side came from Esau, this side came from Jacob, and they were brothers, and they were even twins. So there better be the same DNA markers in both of them. They're from the same family. The family goes Abraham, Isaac, Esau. My family goes Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. So of course there's going to be what the DNA people call Jewish markers, some Ashkenazi, some Sephardi, some from the Middle East, some from here, some from Europe, and all that kind of stuff. Of course it's going to be there. Now, there are going to be people in the world without those markers. The people without those markers are people that didn't come from Abraham and Sarah, like Ishmael. There are people that won't have the same DNA markers because they came from Ham and Japhet and not from Shem. So there are different DNA markers out there, but if they tell you got Jewish DNA markers, you at least got Abraham and Isaac in you. But if you're not Jewish, figure it came out of Esau. So that's the answer to that question. John Rick says perhaps secures the redundancy of vaccine, mask, alcohol, hydrochloroquine, or whatever, and dioxin. I can't read them all. Zinc, social distance, not individually taken all together, but as a backup. Let me tell you that this whole social distancing and keeping yourself clean and washing your hands, all that comes right out of Torah, just so you know. Many times throughout history, the Jews were blamed for illnesses in Europe and even in the Middle East because we didn't die at the same rate other people died. Fewer percentage of the Jews died than other people. But when we do Torah and we do it on a ritualistic basis every day, in other words, during the day, I don't know how many times you wash your hands. God says, wash your hands. You do it when you get up in the morning. You do it before you pray. You do it when you go in the restroom. You do it before you eat a meal. You do it if you're in the presence of a dead person. You do it when you're in the presence of a sick person. You're constantly washing your hands, keeping yourself clean, keeping your clothes clean. So that's the main thing about it. It could be that all this other stuff, I don't know, John, for sure. But you could be right about what you're saying. All right. This was, wow, an hour's gone already. Does anybody have anything they want to say or bring in or take the microphone for a minute, ask a question? Go ahead, Thomas.
I was reading in my Brit Shalom, and in there it says on 45, if a coin falls from someone's pockets next to an idol used for idol worship, one should not bend down to pick them up. Rather, one should sit down and then collect the coins. Does that, I mean, what's the difference? Does that mean like bending over like worship or?
Yeah, that's a good question. And yeah, that's exactly the reason. You don't want to bend over in front of an altar or in front of a person so that someone looking on can say that person is bowing down to that idol, or that person is bowing down to that person. You're better off just leaving it on the ground and walking away than allowing someone to think that you're worshiping this idol or worshiping this other person by bowing down to it. What people see is a great is a teaching device that we use to show people how we're different than religions are. You know, I'm going to give you another example. Is God tells us don't eat milk and meat together. Don't cook a goat and some mother's milk, and we've got don't eat milk and meat together, and we separate the whole bit. But included in there is also chicken, poultry. Now, God never says that's not according to Torah. It's according to the rabbis. You're welcome, listen here. It's not according to Torah. But the rabbis say, what if someone, and this is going back in the old days, someone's walking through the village and they look in your house and they see you sitting at a table and you're eating, let's say a piece, it looks like meat, and there was meat that is white, and there's meat that's dark meat, and they see you eating it with cheese or drinking a glass of milk. They're going to think that it's okay to have milk and meat and cheese together. They won't realize you're only eating poultry. So where do Christians get this whole thing about doing things that appear to be evil? There's a saying they use. I can't remember what it is right now. But don't give the appearance of evil. That's what it is. We are very careful. You know, God tells us we are not to do what the nations do, period. And as the nations started picking up our customs and prayer habits, we had to stop doing them. You'll never see a Jew like this, because those hands together like that are a symbol of how the Catholics used to pray. And if we're sitting with our hands together, we interlink them, but look how I got it. Here's a thumb over here. We don't go like this. We interlink it differently. So it's obvious that we're not praying like the Catholics do. We don't kneel anymore because the Catholics took it over. We only prostrate ourselves once during the year, during Rosh Hashanah time, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And during one of the services, we prostrate ourselves 3 times. But when you read Torah, how many times does it say Abraham prostrated himself in front of the angels, and this one prostrated himself here? And we used to do it, but we don't anymore because we don't want to get people confused. You know, quick little story. There was an artist, and he wasn't a Jewish artist, but he respected the Rebbe very well. And he painted a picture of the Rebbe sitting with his hands folded like this in front of him, like he's praying. Nobody even paid attention that it was the hands thing. But it was a beautiful picture of the Rebbe. So he brought it to 770 to give it to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe looked at it and says, don't take that picture out of here. Do something with it. Give it to somebody else. Throw it away. But I don't want that picture hung up anywhere. So the artist is pretty offended. I guess he never got from the people that the Rebbe told us his people, and I don't know how his people handled telling the artist about this. But what happened was it displeased the Rebbe, and he didn't want the picture hung up anywhere. So the artist says, okay, I'm taking it back. And he took it back and he went down to his car and he leaned it. It was a big picture. He leaned it against his car to open the trunk and put it in the trunk. And as he walked from where the picture was around to the other side, another car came and smashed right into the picture and destroyed it. Now, it didn't hurt the car that much, but it destroyed the picture. The guy wasn't moving that fast. And the picture was totally destroyed. Later on, the artist started telling the story about it because he understood then why the Rebbe didn't like the picture. But because it was a bad depiction, then it got destroyed. There is divine providence. You know, God does control some things in your life. You never have a coincidence. Don't ever say something's a coincidence. Everything is a God incident. It's there to teach you something, show you something, help make you a better person. There is no such thing as coincidence in your lives. God is with all of us all the time, even if you don't believe in him, even if you say bad things about him, he's still there and he's still covering you and he's still, you're okay. He's going to watch over you. Now, there's some deeper issues here about whether you go on to the next level of life or not, but there's no hell. 100% there's no hell. So a loving God, a loving father will never sentence his child, that's what we are, his children, to suffer eternally. I mean, what kind of funny business is that? He loves every one of us. And he wants us to spend eternity with him. And that's why we go through this preparatory phase, all the bad stuff the man does to man, God doesn't do to man. Man does to man. Oh man, why does God let children starve in Africa? Man doesn't let anybody God doesn't let anybody starve. Man lets other men starve and be slaves and persecute them. God doesn't. God gave us, and I say this, I must have said it, the guys that have heard me all the years a million times, they've heard me say this, that God made us the most powerful beings on earth. We're more powerful than angels. We're created in his image. We have the power to choose. And sometimes we don't choose right, but he knows we didn't, but it's up to us to realize it and correct it. Go ahead, Terry.
That reminds me of something I've been thinking about this week. I've seen a couple articles the last few days of people doing the right things, people going over and beyond, people stopping and changing tires, taking people, getting groceries, giving people rides, just different things. And this one article, I think it was a police officer stopped and helped this family do some, they had some car trouble. And in the title of the article says, God sent me an angel. And I'm like, it just caused me to think all week. And I'm like, wait a minute here. It's so religious and strange when somebody does what they were supposed to be doing to begin with, is God sent an angel. When we've let down on our duties as human beings. And if we were doing what we're supposed to be doing, like what we're learning through the Sheva Mitzvahs, then it's not about praising God for sending an angel. It's praising God that someone's obeying him. And that's just what you were talking about just reminded me this week, these articles. And I just got to thinking about, I'm tired of hearing God, the good Samaritan, God sent me an angel and all this stuff, when we all need to be doing that to begin with.
That's right.
Because every person represents God. He doesn't have to send an angel. We are the representatives of God in his image.
You're absolutely right. And the only reason you see more of it in the paper this time of year is peace on earth, goodwill to man. So, oh my God, got a good heart. It's this time of year. I'm going to do this. We should be doing it every day, all day.
Yeah, matter of fact, that's interesting. I had a memory show up on my Facebook, I think last week. I had written something a couple of years ago and says that giving is not seasonal.
That's exactly right. I think I discuss it all the time. Every time before you do a mitzvah, I mean, even if you're going to change a tire for somebody, and that's why people keep these little charity cans inside their cars. If you're going to stop and help somebody, you put a few coins in that little charity box. Why? You're thanking God. There you go, Thomas. You're thanking God that he sent you the situation you could help somebody. You get credit for helping that person. And so we giving charity or tzedakah is our number one thing. So but we always do that before we do the other thing. When we go and pray, we do it. When we light candles during, for Shabbat and for holidays, we give a few coins. You don't have to give a lot of money. Put 3 coins, 4 coins in. God doesn't care how much. He wants you to get used to putting your hand in your pocket and helping other people. That's what the charity. There's also, and we'll go into it another time about the tithe, that's something else altogether. So, yes. And everybody this time, oh, peace on earth, goodwill to end, jingle bells, holy night, silent night, whatever the songs are. And so they get in this mood this time of year to help other people. But where's that mood the rest of the year? God wants us, this is one of his commandments to us, to treat everything, all of his creation kindly, to be kind to one another, to help one another in any way we can. And those of you that want to know more about tzedakah and charity, Scotty's got some videos he put up. I guess he's got them on a YouTube place, but it's also on his timeline. He does these short little videos all the time. And you probably got a blog or two about it on your Amunah Trek, right? If I remember right.
On tzedakah.
Yeah.
I'd have to go look at my history, see what I've got. I've written so much this year. I've written quite a bit.
Yeah, I remember reading something about it, but I can't remember. That's the one thing about getting older. It seems like you got so much stuff in your head, you don't have room for new stuff. Got to erase some stuff like you do in a computer when it gets overloaded.
Or where it mixes up and you get part of this and part of that. At least that's what happens with me.
Yeah, it's so true. Listen, everybody that's listening and all, if you're watching on YouTube, there's a button down there you can push to subscribe. Tonight we're on the World Noahide Center channel. Subscribe there. There's a lot of great teachings on there, a lot of great teachers. There's also the prayer meetings on 11 a.m. Saturdays, and they use this is the book that's used here, and Noahides from all over the world get together and they do the prayer service, do a Torah reading, and then Rabbi Goldberg gives an explanation of the Torah reading. It's a good way to become part of a community, come together. You got to start somewhere, folks. You might as well do it that way. And it helps reconnect with God. The book is also good for daily prayer, for those that you wish to pray daily, to keep you connected with God. So 11 a.m., look, you can see it on Arizona Noahide World Connection Facebook page, or Seattle Noahide's Facebook page, or B'nai Noah Connection with Israel Facebook page. Somebody shares it over there while they're on live. Of course, we're not around because it's Shabbat for us when it's being done. So get on board with the rest of the community. Don't be loners. God didn't create us to be loners. He created us, mankind, to be a community, brothers and sisters. And that's what we need to be. And it doesn't make any difference where you come from, where you live, what color your skin is. It makes a difference whether you're in religion or not. Best thing to do is kind of leave it behind. And I'm not going to get into all the reasons. You can figure them out. But what you got to do first is ask questions. Is what you believe truth, or are you just accepting on faith it's truth, or did somebody actually got my head crooked? Did somebody actually prove to you through God's word that it's true from the 5 books of Moses? Or are you reading something that has reinterpreted God's word into somebody else's word? Or are you reading a different Bible altogether? Is it called the Quran, or is it called this or that or the other thing? Or is it called the New Testament? Or if you're reading a book called the Old Testament, it's old because it's been misinterpreted. You got to go back to the original. You got to go back to the Chumash, the 5 books of Moses, which is available online in many, many places, and you should have a copy in your house. And it doesn't really make any difference which one you get. There you go, the Stone Edition Chumash. And yeah, the Chumash. Is that from Art Scroll?
Yes, it's an Art Scroll Stone Edition Chumash. This was my introduction. I was still a Christian when I purchased this back in 2002-ish, somewhere in there. And it was my introduction to studying the Hebrew scriptures.
And
really good. It's because it has the Hebrew, it has English Hebrew, and has some really good commentary, that you can learn from.
Yeah,
and it has the Haftorah, the reading from the prophets that goes with the
Torah portion.
There's charts in here. There's just really good all around. I mean, most Noahides I know, people that are Noahides now, this is where they got started. It was their first book and introduction to the Hebrew scriptures, which I really recommend it. It's really
good recommendation. Good. John says, not what you know, but how you know. And that is true. Absolutely. Are you just accepting something on faith with no proof? And are you afraid to question it? Or if you go to somebody and you question it, do they say that's because we say it's this way? Or when you go to ask a question, or you give it an explanation, and maybe it's not the answer you want, but it's the answer that God has put in front of us, which is the most important thing. Not all answers are the answers we think they're going to be. And that's what happens to most people. That's why you see me as I don't know how I got my hat all mixed up, but anyway, you see me here as a black and white Haredi Jew, Hasid, because I asked questions and I accepted the answers, and I was shown the proof of the answers in the writings of God and the writings of all the sages that have been writing about it for 3,500 years, since we got 3,300 years since we got it. So
for me, it was, I used to have a home Torah study group. I was a Messianic teacher at the time, and had a lady asking me some stuff every week, same question for about a month. Finally, I said, yeah, I'll go check it out. And when I checked it out, the question came to me it was more of a statement for me when I realized it was through Ezekiel 18 that I was praying to the wrong one. So a good question is who you praying to?
Yes, that's true. That's true. Now, listen, I missed a question here, and it's a good one. Listen here, says, will God punish those who are Jewish but didn't know? Like if somebody's mother was Jewish, but they were converted because they were being persecuted, would their kids who didn't know they were Jewish be punished? Absolutely not. No one is punished for the sins of their parents, but we're punished for our own sins. And this is where you stop to ask questions. For those people that converted and were forced to convert all over Europe and Spain and Portugal by the Inquisition, they converted, and there's some very deep things here. But when they would go into a Christian church to pray, they'd go stop outside the door, most of them, and look up to God and say, look, you know, the reason I'm going in here, it isn't because I'm praying to that God in there. They were doing it to keep their families alive. But now we have what we call the anusin, the relatives of these people that are just discovering that their great-grandparents were Jewish and their great-great-grandparents were Jewish, on the mother's side especially, because that's where it comes from. And they want to become, they're Jewish. Their mother, their grandmother, their great-grandmother, they were all Jewish. But what happened was if you go back to a town where your family grew up and you ask if the family was Jewish and you said, no, they went to a church, then you got a little problem because you really have to go through. It's called conversion b'chomra. In other words, we already know you're Jewish, but you got to learn all the stuff to get you up to date. So you're doing the stuff you're supposed to do because you're Jewish, and get rid of the other, whatever other religion you were mixed up with. Never, ever. That's why you got to ask questions. You know, it's funny. My youngest daughter, who's in her 50s, she's divorced. She met a guy, and she liked him, and they're planning on getting married. And the mother, and he knew he knows she's Jewish, and the mother of the guy came to my daughter and said, I just want you to know we're Jewish also, but don't tell my son he does not know that his mother and his mother's mother and his mother's 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 mothers were all Jewish. Somewhere down the line, they converted. And so she says, don't tell them. And this is how a lot of people, they get stuck in the lie because they don't want, what are you going to go tell your 55-year-old kid, by the way, I didn't tell you, but, you know, you're really Jewish, or your dad's not your dad, or whatever, you know, it's, you make yourself out a liar in front of the person for all those years. So God doesn't punish somebody for that. And a Jew that's raised by Jews, that isn't raised in a Torah fashion, the literal translation of who that is a kidnapped child. You were kidnapped, you had no idea, you had no relation. Once you know, you're supposed to learn. So always ask questions. Always ask questions. And if you're in some other religion right now and you're listening to me, go ask some questions. Most of the people who have left religion start off with, how come the Shabbat is on Sunday and not on Saturday? Like it says in the Torah. How come this? How come that? And the answers they get are, believe it, just have faith. They can't prove a thing to you. And when they tell you to believe something just because they say it, you know, you're going to believe anything anybody tells you? Come here. Wait a minute. I need some money and I'll sell you the Brooklyn Bridge. You know, you're not going to do that. So know that that's what it is. And everybody's going to come back around in the end anyway. People are starting to do it in droves. There's a tsunami, a tidal wave getting ready. And all the truth is on the internet right now. You just got to make sure you're getting the truth from people who are speaking the truth. You have to know who you're listening to. You don't want to listen to somebody that, well, you'll find out about those people. And it's okay. Listen here. You can ask as many questions as you want. That's what we're here for. It excites us when people ask questions because it gives us a back and forth. And that's why we do it in all the different rooms and different places. So people will come, and they'll come we're here Sunday night at 10 o'clock, same link. And we're here on Wednesday nights at 8 o'clock. Now, this is New York time. It's the same exact Zoom room. Just click on that. Anytime you see on my Facebook page or anybody's Facebook page about a Zoom room for Torah for the Nations, it's the same link. Don't need a passcode. When people come, we just admit you in. So come and join us on Sunday nights. We use a different YouTube channel, but we still shows up the same way on Facebook and YouTube. Hit likes on, subscribe to our Torah for the Nations YouTube channel And you have to subscribe twice, once on Sunday, and once on Wednesday, because they're two different channels. But if you want to know when we're going to be on, that's the only way to know. Subscribe on both of them. Real important. And we ask you, real important, especially the Sunday night meetings. Subscribe. We're trying to hit 1,000 viewers. I think we're jumped up to about 260 right now. We're just started to push to get subscribers. Subscribe also on YouTube. I had it right in my head because I went and read the title of it. Okay, Scotty, Terry, the YouTube that you do, the teachings, sacred, what?
Sacred Odyssey Videocast.
There we go.
Spiritual and intellectual quest, an intellectual and spiritual quest. One of those two.
Go. And you know what? If you got somebody asking questions, just asking questions, it's a pretty good place to go, because what they're doing is they've started with Genesis and they're just teaching the connection between us, every human being, and God through the book of Genesis. It's all there. Go ahead, Scotty.
We just recorded another video, and Terry sent me the information I need to put on YouTube when I put it up, and I apologize I haven't got it done yet, but I'm going to tell you something. I've listened to that 4 times now myself, and I get something every time. I didn't realize we talked about everything we talked about. And when I'm going to get it out when you see it, you're going to just be glued to my grandmother used to say, you're too glued to that TV, and you'll be glued to it to get the information.
So yeah, Scotty and Terry, they're both certified teachers, by the way, from World Noahide Center, Noahide World Center. I have trouble keeping that straight. I guess it's age. So they're both certified teachers. They've been through, talking about that, my goodness, the 10th of January, it's a Sunday. We're going to be doing, we're holding another Bet Din, a court. Anybody that wants to take the Noahide Pledge, let me know so I can get you signed up so you can be there. If you know anybody that's interested, have them get a hold of me. I'll put a post up tomorrow about it, and I'll be running it almost every day, and share it with any groups you want to share to. Groups, there are a lot of groups they don't want you putting up certain posts in their groups, and this is one of them about the Noahide Pledge, and that's okay. Everybody's got their opinions, and I respect that. But January 10th, and it's at 3:30 Israel time, which makes it for 10 o'clock, 9:30 East Coast time, USA. 9:30, 8:30, 7:30, 6:30 West Coast time, USA. So it's 3 rabbis, of course, and I'll be there. And you say the pledge, and you're pledging to God, not to us or anybody else. We just sign as witnesses. Like when people get married in front of God, you have witnesses that sign they were there, and here's we witnessed they were there. Anybody wants to know about it, we'll talk more about it on Sunday night. Do me a favor, and I'm glad. Let me just look down the list here and see who's still here. Chris, and I see Frank left. Look, guys, bring people into the room. Show them how to get in here. If you're on, if Cloudy Hat, if you're on Facebook, go to B'nai Noach Connection with Israel, and sign up there. Put a like on the page, become a member, and ask. Pesach Sherbo is my name, and you can ask for a friend request. But do me a favor. I'm going to start asking people to do this. When you send me a friend request, the first thing I do is go to your Facebook page, and to see your posts, to see stuff. And I'm so tired of doing that. So I'm going to ask people, when you send me a Facebook request, I'll click to go to your page, but I'd like to see a post there. It says, "Hi, Pesach Sherbo." And that's all I need. I'll know that you've listened to me and that you, it's crazy to have so many people asking to be friends who I don't know why, don't know nothing. I guess that's what Facebook called friends today. So contact me in those two places and listen here. Listen here. Let me tell you what. Tune in on Sunday night, and I'll go through the whole thing at the beginning of the program for anybody that has questions. So if anybody listening out there now wants to know more about it, I'll talk about it Sunday night at 10 Eastern Time USA, and that's 6 West Coast time. Okay. Anybody else have anything they want to say? Any questions? Anything going on? If not, then I want to thank everybody for being with us. I appreciate it. I appreciate your questions. And I'm taking my face off so we can have a little marker on the to end up the program without my face on it. And I want to tell you guys, I appreciate you guys so much. And it's really great to be together with all those people walking with the God of Israel and walking that path of being human beings, complete human beings. God bless you all. Stay healthy. See you next week.